I do.
All right, ready? Hey, Dan. I'm Jaster. Yeah, nice to meet you.
Good
How are
to meet
you?
you.
Cool. Hey, listen, so I know you've met with Brendan and Ted, and they've kind of filled me in. This is our first time meeting. So what I like to do is I like to come in and kind of give a quick introduction to myself. I've got some questions for you, both personal side of kind of how you see things are going, and related to this project. And then I think we're going to talk about next steps and probably just close it out. And I know your time is limited, so I want to kind of stay on track. But first of all, I want to give you an introduction of who I am. So they formed this position called EIA. It's a tongue twister title that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense just yet, but I'm sure we'll capture onto it. So it stands for Enterprise Infrastructure Architect. Basically what I'm doing is I'm overlapping the pre-sale side, so you know Brendan and Ted and how they're kind of coming in with the pre-sale sides and giving you high-level details. I'm the guy that's going to come in and kind of fish out all the finite details with yourself, the people that are underneath you, and then kind of seamlessly move that into the post-sale side, so I line up all the right technologies, the people, and make sure the solution goes in the correct way. On a personal note, I'm very excited. I'm very fascinated with space exploration in this case. I was actually in the Air Force, and I worked part-time with Space Command. So I was actually on the systems that watch the 65,000 plus objects and debris that orbit the Earth. So this is very close to my heart. So what I'd like to ask you now, I know that you've been on campus for a number of years. You've never used NetApp, but all of your colleagues here have. So I kind of like to get a vibe from you. How do you feel about NetApp? And please be as candid as you want. I got thick skin, and you're not gonna hurt my feelings.
Well, I Googled NetApp, and so that's about as far as I went to get information on the company. So I believe you guys are in the storage business. So can you tell me a little bit about the company?
Yeah, so basically this year we just announced that we are projected doing 40% growth year over year. We are now the second number two leader in the market for storage, and right behind EMC. And we also bring to the table a whole plethora of suites of products that increase storage efficiency and usage. We can go into some more specific details when we start talking about how it would be applicable in your environment. Now, one thing that I know, because we're all humans, I mean, this happens. You told Brendan something, Brendan told Ted something, then Ted told me something, and sometimes something gets lost in translation or changed around. So if you wouldn't mind just real quick, just telling me a little bit about what your expectations are and kind of what the objectives that have been set forth by NASA to you.
So NASA gave me a list of requirements, and so I've taken those requirements back to my team, and we've actually built another list of kind of subsystem requirements. And I guess I'd like you to convince me that I can't go to Fry's and just based on buying the piece parts and be able to put together my own solution. So what can NetApp do different?
Well,
I try to do this in-house.
One of the things, and I can kind of talk from practical experience, I worked for the government and with the government, both as an employee and as a vendor. One of the things I can tell you, especially with Raytheon, is that the government likes to be able to isolate liability. They don't like these homemade solutions anymore whenever projects, especially government-funded projects, are on the line. In your case, I know you have a lot of brilliant people, and I definitely think they could probably do a great job. But when it really comes down to when something goes down, who's the liability effect? And also, we abstract a lot of layers of complexity. And I always tell people, complexity equals risk. Okay? So what NetApp brings to the table is a single architecture scheme, a single operating system with all the features built in. We don't have to add on appliances. We don't have to do anything else. Now, for your solution, we might have to add in some applicable components to fulfill it if we can't fulfill it natively, and that happens with a lot of stuff, so don't feel out of place. But depending on your objectives and requirements, we may have to add some stuff in there, but natively, we have all the components underneath that we don't need to worry about risk there. So what exactly did NASA come down and tell you so far? Have they come down and told you explicitly what you have to have yet?
Yeah, they have, and actually in the contract that we signed with NASA, there are some penalty clauses. Okay. So if I can have you assume some of that risk, that would probably give me some more sleep at night. So I think that if you guys are willing to take on that risk, that'll actually help me positive. One of the other big concerns is basically are we able to recover data if we lose data, or what are some of the things that NetApp does to protect the data in all different stages of production?
So, you know, in most cases that are very similar. Now yours is going to be slightly unique with some of the requirements that I have seen so far. The natively built in, we have what's called a snapshot. Now I won't go into details about it, but what it is, it's in essence, it's a snapshot of the data as it is. And what the grandest thing about it is that it's an online immediate backup copy without having to overutilize space where unnecessary. The second component, that's like the foundation. So anything else on top of that, with our DR mirroring capabilities, using your already invested infrastructure, I don't have to put new infrastructure in, so I keep your cost down that way. It's already existing Ethernet infrastructure. And then we also have vaulting. So the vaulting happens natively, so I can keep multiple contiguous days of online backups for you to use whenever you need.
Okay, so I have one requirement that I think is going to be very complicated and difficult to meet. I have to build a 300 terabyte contiguous file system.
Okay.
And I've talked to my internal team, and we've been trying to figure out how we could do it. And we're kind of running against the wall. So how do you guys can help us solve that?
In fact, we actually have another customer that's very similar to that. There's actually about 3 industry standard approaches to that now. NetApp can sort of do that natively, but not quite yet. So what I like to do is take this away and go back to my team and pull out the 3 industry standards, put some pros and cons and risks together, as well as cost, obviously, and kind of come back to you and your team and finish up, kind of lay out what we need to. Now I don't want to keep you any longer, but what I am going to do is meet with some of your other techies.
Okay.
I want to really extrapolate out all the technical details that we need to. And then what I'll probably do, like I said, is I'll follow up with those 3 industry standards. We'll come back as a team, both the sales engineer, the sales rep, and maybe even some of your colleagues to rediscuss this solution in detail. So real quick, do you have any other questions for me?
No, how long do you guys can come back?
Well, you know, it depends on availability, but obviously this has got a sense of urgency against it. So let's shoot for a week from today.
Okay, great.
And I'll get it on your calendar. I'll work with your admin and get it on your calendar and get it set up.
All right.
Great. Thanks again. It's nice to meet you.
What worked?
I don't know. I'm just a personal guy, so I can talk about anybody. So I try to keep everything as personal as possible. When I get people to kind of just see me as a person and not a vendor. I hate to say that, but even I don't want them to see me as a sales guy. I don't want to be cheesy like that. So I'm always about kind of hitting the note.
No offense.
No,
President company accepted.
No, you know, it's just one of those things. I like to kind of personalize things and
Yeah.
get them in tune with me.
Good.
We'll access the wall.
Yeah.
I did, you know, I've been in the industry for about 19 years and I've worked everywhere. So anytime I get a chance that I'm going to do something or work in an industry that I have some experience in, I bring it up, if it's relevant.
Good.
I won't just randomly bring it up, but if it's relevant, I like to bring it up. Because sometimes, you know, it excites them or makes them feel better because they're like, oh, this guy actually is relevant. You know,
There's a connection.
He has some disciplines in this industry, so he kind of knows what's going on.
Yeah, that's a good rapport. Anything more on the positive? What worked well?
I don't know.
Okay. Anything on the for next time?
Yeah, if I had more time, a little more fluid, but yeah.
Let me go over to stakeholder.
Yeah, so Glen definitely established a good rapport right from the get-go, so felt comfortable. And as far as the questions, I thought all the questions were basically from a person that wasn't feeling comfortable about the company. The good summary about NetApp as a company, and kind of went down into kind of what NetApp's done in the past. So I think that was all good.
Okay, cool.
Observers.
So what I really like to have a mark on here is that you said you had a personal stake in references on the campus, which I thought was really powerful to establish your credibility.
Thanks.
He
Anything
seemed
else?
very earnest too. He seemed like he was engaged. He wasn't just saying stuff. I think it's his personality. It's very, I'm genuinely
Come across
interested.
bullshitter.
Yeah.
You didn't come across salesy.
Let's be
Yeah.
candid, we can be.
Yeah, that's right.
You weren't slimy or whatever the term was that you used.
Cheesy.
Cheesy, there you go. Sorry.
Yeah.
On the, everybody hit on the what's working well, because there's a lot of what's working well. Good redirect on the technical question, by the way. You know, the 3 industry standards and
Yes.
then pushing it off. I thought that was
Yeah.
great.
Good.
On the for next time, you made a comment regarding homemade, which may have been taken a little bit offensively, given his nature.
Yeah, actually, that one too.
I should have said something like engineered.
Yeah,
He kind of
cut-
challenged his
Yeah.
team.
It's a vocabulary choice. Yeah.
You cut off his
Changing the
last
word.
response to you. I noticed when you were talking about getting the meeting set up, and he started to say something, and then you cut him off and said, "Yeah, I'll get it scheduled, and I'll line it all up and get it taken care of." I don't know. I kind of stepped over him on that,
Okay.
and I don't know if you were doing it intentionally, but you pushed him to do all the talking. You spent a lot more time percentage-wise talking as a result, but it was primarily because you were forcing him to do that. You kept
asking
like, "I'm not a believer. Tell me why I should trust you." So it was balanced in that regard.
It was brilliant on your part. I wish I had
Which
come up
was
with that
very,
when I was there.
very
They
good.
used it on me.
Here's the idea around that, and just to expand that thought. Answer the question with a question sometimes. Because he did turn it on you in a discovery meeting. Is this a discovery meeting that benefits you? The more information you get, the better position of strength you are in a later negotiation. Or is it a sales meeting? Because he got you to sell him, and that skewed the ratio of talk time. So when I say answer a question with a question, if he asks you a question, what can you do for me? What can NetApp do? You're always thinking about, I'd love to be able to address that. And in order to be able to do that to your real best interest, let me ask you, boom, go into another question to dig for more information.
I think that some of those questions would have probably been answered by the SC. and
Probably,
stuff
yeah.
already, so but it's still.
Yeah, good point. Let me see what I can add. You acknowledged very well his environment, work environment, constraints. Clearly you know what's going on. So a high degree of credibility. I'm not going to cover ground that's already been trod. Body language, good job. For next time, you were really good in setting the agenda for the meeting, and that gets a strong degree of engagement, a sense of a green light. Yeah, let's go with that. That's a great place after you suggest the agenda to check in and get affirmation or validation before you go forward. I noticed one thing that is a for next time. You did a great job of your personal introduction. When you introduced NetApp, if this is a guy who's tight-fisted, squeeze every nickel, mentioning that NetApp has 40% growth year over year could or could not work in your best favor.
That's true.
Ka-ching, ka-ching.
He said number 2 best place to order, number 7.
Yeah, something that establishes a differentiator or a unique capability that would help his organization would be something to reference about NetApp as an organization. Your self-intro, I wouldn't change a thing because I thought it was very well done.
There are some instances, maybe not to go this one, but there are some instances where the customer wants NetApp's relevance. In other
I
words,
agree.
They don't want to go buy something from somebody who might go under in a couple of days. If
Absolutely.
they didn't go out and do their research for NetApp, sometimes you have to. But you're right. Another word of oh, yeah, you are expensive. Here's why.
Then.
All right. Hey, Dan. Glenn. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Adrian, good to see you again too. Jack, always a pleasure. Thank you. So I just want to recap kind of where we've been. Obviously, you know that a lot of things have been going on behind the scenes. Dan, I've been working with you and your folks. Today, I'm introducing you guys to the concept behind all of this and kind of just the business area of what this means to you guys. So to give you a kind of a recap of where we've been is Dan and I had an initial interview to kind of overlay or kind of get an idea of what the concepts were, what the requirements were, what the government has come down and put upon you guys, and what this means for the university and publicly and privately. Some of the things that I took away from your team after our first interview for the technical details, and what I did was, so you guys know, is I actually went back to NASA. I went to the University of Arizona, I went to the University of Texas, I went to the Mars rover folks, and a couple of other private institutions, Viacom, who actually has this running one of their media environments, and kind of got some ideas behind it, but also some expectations. So NASA has some very strict expectations of you guys. So what we're going to talk about today is kind of how those kind of bleed into the requirements as I see them, and I've prioritized them up here. I'm going to go through them one by one and kind of articulate why they should be important. And then at the end of this, if you guys want to rearrange the priorities, we can. But I need you to fully understand why they are priority and where they're at. So let me just start with accepted by industry. This is one of your concerns, Dan. The big deal was that you didn't want to be isolated. You want to be an island. You didn't want to be a pioneer out there all on your lonesome self and have nobody to support you. NetApp is going to support you. After having talks with NASA and having NASA interface with the University of Arizona and University of Texas, we're behind you here. So you're not alone in this industry. You're not pioneering anything, although some things may be slightly unique. The concept is still industry standard. Highly available. This is a big deal. This data is the first of its kind in 30 years. So we need this data to always be available. It's going to be global. Everybody's going to need access to it, and it's always got to be up. That leads into my third point, which is scalable. It's going to be global. Everyone is going to use it. Now, on the government side, and I should say on the HPC side, clients will interact directly. So we're going to have a large client base. 2,000 to 5,000 clients is just the first 3 years. We don't know what it's going to be like yet. We don't have to scale the trend yet. Being able to replicate and DR this. This is going to tie to another point right down here that I'm going to get to here in a second. Obviously, this is very important data. As you guys know, the government's calling it a national treasure. This solution also houses Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo data, all of those images from 1969 and above, as well as all the telemetry data. So it's very important data. So we've got to replicate it 5 miles away, okay? Simple yet reliable. Obviously, you're a government organization. You don't pay very much for your staff. So your people are kind of limited in your skill sets, what you can afford right now. So what we want to do is keep this as simple as possible. Remember, complexity equals risk. So we want to keep it simple as possible. We want to keep it dumbed down, but we want to make it reliable. It's got to be solid. Sixth thing, excuse me. This is more of a technical point, but we have to have 30 days of continuous immediate backups. This means that if I got to get a single file or I got to restore an entire file system, I need to do it within 30 continuous days. The reason why this ties into here, this does you absolutely nothing if your backups are only in one building. So the solution has to have 30 days at both sites, and we want to keep that simple. Seventh thing is cost effectiveness. Now, this is really where it gets into the nitty-gritty stuff. This is the number that Congress allocated for this grant, $460 million. It goes towards the vehicle. This is a launch vehicle produced by Orbital Science. It goes towards the operations. This includes the satellite tracking by Space Command and also by NASA. It also includes your staff who's monitoring this 24/7. It includes the instruments. The instruments are the the cameras, and then also the gyroscopes that are on board on the satellite itself, also part of the vehicle. The equipment, this is the equipment that you guys are purchasing, but also the units that your operations staff is going to use to manipulate the satellite and obtain images, and then of course people. So cost effectiveness, let's use that as like a really broad term, because cost effectiveness to you is one thing, it could be something to you completely different, right? The big thing here is that this number, that you may or may not see the quote yet, but I can assure you that it's a 0.XX% of this total number. Now the big thing here is that you're not going to get in your car without having an insurance policy, right? You're not going to go drive on the streets of California or Arizona without insurance. What this number gets you is a reliable solution. It also gets you an insurance policy. It gets you all of these things that you have to justify this number back to Congress in 18 months when you have to tell them where their data is. Don't forget the human aspect. all of these people, Raytheon, General Dynamics, Orbital Science, Kodak, and NASA, all these people put all those hours into this. If you lost this data, not only do you have to go to Congress and say they just wasted $460 million, but you got to tell these people that they wasted all their time. And don't forget all the people that were in front of their TVs in 1969 that were sitting there watching this, and now you've reignited the passion in them. So that all leads back into this number, which gets you all of this. So do you guys have any questions so far? Have I really got you going?
Yeah. What's the operations model for maintaining the equipment?
So it's on a 3-year maintenance warranty from the data side, from the storage, the side that we're presenting. Now on your side, I'm not really for sure what you guys have spec'd out from your particular side.
Okay, but for your side, is that included in the cost, in the quote that you guys were?
We have included on maintenance, so your premium support, so that's 4-hour response on break fix. You'll also get PSE on site for any outages. And included in the product brief, I listed on all the items that come with premium support. And I think I'm about out of time, so it was good to see you guys again. Talk to you later.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
All right, what is working? Working well.
I don't know. Started running out of breath towards the end. Need to be able to pace myself a little bit better.
You don't know what's working.
Well,
You're
no.
going toward, all right, what's working?
I like to stay structured. I like to make my points. I like to make them brief, but I like to make them very structured and very to the point. I'm kind of frank about some stuff. Sometimes that can be a good thing, sometimes it's not. But like I said, I'm a blunt person a lot of the times. So.
Does it fit well with, clearly you have the relationship with Dan. Does that work well with your other two stakeholders as well? I mean, do you know them? Do they know you? Do they work with you? Is that blunt?
These guys I've worked with
Forthright.
for a number of years. I mean, obviously they still see me as beneath them with respect to my position. Obviously, they pair up with the sales rep, and they know I'm a tier down, but they still have respect for me because I've done a lot of technical stuff for them before that's been a success.
So a very forthright
Yeah,
manner
so
can
I think
be
I've got the credibility.
advantageous.
Yeah, I've got the credibility, but of course they kind of know my place in the totem pole.
Yeah. It's fine. They know that you're going to give them the information in a way that's very clear and direct. And they're fine with it. So, anything for next time?
Yeah, I paced myself a little bit better. I got a little, I ran out of breath towards the end. I was trying to catch my breath, and sometimes that can be a problem, like I'm not confident in what I'm talking about. So I've got to learn. It's only happened a couple of times where I get too excited. Like I was telling you earlier about, I was telling Greg earlier about being excited. Sometimes you get too excited and you're like, oh, I'm thankful I'm not conditioned, so.
So let me go to, and I'm going to go to Paul as Dan Paul as key stakeholder.
I thought what went well was having the outline there to kind of let us know exactly what you were walking down as far as the content, and then I think for next time maybe a couple checkpoints like check-in, so how does this sound, or
Yeah, it's kind of a monologue for a while.
about
Yeah.
that.
Okay. I got you.
Others?
So I like the structure, very detailed, very prepared. Sounds like you really know what you're talking about. That came across really well. The only thing I thought that might have been a hiccup or a catch is when you, on point number 5, it sounds like you kind of dissed the technical staff there. We said, government guys, they're not paid anything. So that
Yeah, we
kind
don't.
of was a little bit
Obviously, you
of a
don't.
negative
Government
thing
doesn't
there.
pay much for your staff.
It's hard to articulate. These guys know that
They
they
know.
can't get.
Yeah, they know.
They can't get.
I mean, I'm not in an environment that just might
Yeah,
come across
no,
wrong to
it's,
the
you
wrong
can be,
person.
that's kind of where you have to
Yeah.
know your audience before.
Know your audience. How do you state that in a way where it doesn't create a rift or a negative impression? Take the same idea and massage the words. How might you state it differently?
Cameras on you, Greg?
So you might say, to be more cost effective with your staff, given your current staffing levels and budget for your staff, maybe a more.
That's good.
Yeah, very diplomatic, and they know, you know. Anything else that you care to name in terms of worked well? Or?
I thought it was impressive how much research you did about them.
Yes.
I mean, that says, hey, this guy really cares about this project. You know,
Really great.
the only thing I would caution you on is, and it's really picky because I couldn't pick anything that was wrong. Was you mentioned the Gemini, Mercury, and Apollo, you know, data from 1969. Reality is, I mean, these PhDs, they probably know that went before the 1969.
It was, yeah. Gemini
So,
started way before
yeah,
that.
I mean, but reality is, I mean, I had to really stretch to find something. So it was fantastic.
Let me swing it out to the observers. What might you add? Anyone care to add?
I don't want to go with the ad stuff, but for next time, maybe limit the use of you guys.
How many did you hear?
I heard only 2.
7?
Oh.
Wow.
So you're
I
talking
can say
professors.
y'all.
Yeah.
All y'all is the plural, right?
Sure. I like that.
But, I mean, great, but you're talking to professors, so they're usually ego-driven, I think, professors are. And they may take that as a little too informal.
That's very observant given the fact that he stated the relationship is very respectful and they view themselves as being one step above you in terms of that level of experience. So it's a good comment to make, be aware of it. And I wrote down, is it mentionable? I don't know because I wrote down the same thing. I wrote down in my column, and you'll see, is it mentionable? Because you can judge better the relationship you have, and you'll make your own decision around that, of course. Anything more?
No, but I like Robert said, it was very impressive of the background that you gave them, the research you did right from the start. And I think that's impressive in itself and says a lot.
What does that say to the stakeholders? You said it cares a lot,
He
he's
cares.
really invested in it.
Well, into it.
Sincere.
Passionate.
He's dedicated.
Mhm.
There's a key thing around that as well. If you can demonstrate that your stakeholders' best interests are tantamount, they have such deep trust in you. Because if you put their interests first, clearly, throughout every conversation you have, you are not a salesperson, the non-cheesy. They don't see you as trying to sell them anything. You know, they'll spend huge amounts of money with you and thank you for doing so. It's wonderful. Anything to add here? All right then. Smart opening statements, very clear on your update. The actions for the stakeholders stated right up front. Just brilliant, brilliant ideas. In other words, you stated what they have to have a clear understanding, how you want them to engage during the meeting. Always want to do that. I like that you personalized your comments to Dan in his own words. Demonstrates that you're paying attention, again, very attentive to what's important, needs and priorities. Well thought out agenda, knowledgeable throughout. And this is an interesting thing. I rarely see this. To build on the comments about what extensive research and work you put into this, you wove a cohesive story. All the elements of what he discussed fit as parts of a whole. In other words, the whole getting in, you said, I'm not going to go deep dive technical. You didn't. But this was a great example of how do you begin a story, explain the story, and conclude the story. I love that you went through not just the advantages to them, the consequences, the negative implications that could befall them in terms of not just if you lost this chunk of change, but also all these, these constituents have put all this work in. So it was a really cohesive story that was clear in every way. That's a rare thing, by the way. I don't see that too often, especially not in 6 minutes. Eye contact was quite focused. Did you look at Jack?
I tried to go back and forth, back and forth.
Were you going? Yeah, was he? I couldn't tell. Okay,
think so.
that was fine. I was not sure about that, so I'll strike that comment because I wasn't sure. Then again, he's Asian because, Asian people don't use eye contact this long typically anyway, so we can let that go. This would be the real picky. This is incredibly picky. Pointing your finger at people sometimes is taken as a scolding. Open hand, if you're gonna gesture towards somebody, an open hand is seen as more inviting as opposed to pointing your finger at them.
Was it his finger or the marker?
Either
It's
one,
this.
probably, yeah.
There was one point where it was there.
Okay,
One point it was this.
I didn't know that. That's good.
You'll see it, that's a very minor comment. I don't know that that would be evident to anyone. Occasionally, you'll get someone who takes it in a, defensive way, but that's
Somebody new,
really
I
picky.
probably-
Yeah.
Somebody I didn't know before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, all right. So, there we go, give him a hand, well done.